Welcome, everybody, to Both Sides of the Story. I'm your host, Alan Janae from CBS 4. Thank you for joining us. Our special high school debate tournament continues, challenging our students and our viewers to look at important Colorado issues from both sides. Now, each student tonight will offer a case, ask and answer questions of their opponent, and offer rebuttal. We'll also feature an expert judging panel who will chime in with questions of their own. Now, both students tonight have prepared a pro and a con case for tonight's debate topic, and they won't know which side they'll defend until we have a coin flip right here in our studio. Now, we've added a brand new element this year. This is our special tournament edition. 4 schools have competed so far, and the winners from those debates now compete in the semifinals. And ultimately, we will name one both sides of the story champ. Now, tonight's semifinal match features students from the Cherry Creek High School speech and debate team, as well as the George Washington High School speech and debate team. So let's meet our participants now. First is Andrew Ying. He is a senior at Cherry Creek High School and truly prides himself in being a team motivator. He serves on the National Honor Society Board. Andrew defeated his teammate Will Herbst in our preliminary round. Next is Monroe Roush from GW. She is a senior, and this is her 3rd year on the team, focusing on extemporaneous speaking. When she isn't doing speech and debate, she also runs cross country and plays the flute. Monroe defeated her teammate Tristan Camp-Legault in the preliminary round. Now, we also have our special panel of experts who are here, who will offer their analysis of this debate. They are Dominic Dezzutti, host of Colorado Decides, the election debate series produced in conjunction with CBS 4. Patricia Calhoun, editor of Westword and weekly Colorado Inside Out panelist, as well as Natasha Gardner, senior editor of 5280 magazine and a regular panelist on Colorado Inside Out. Now, before we get started, let's hear what Cherry Creek's speech and debate team has meant to Andrew.
Debate is truly a cross-disciplinary activity. We have people on varsity sports. We have people from every single corner of Cherry Creek High School that all just share a common interest in learning more about the world. And I think that's what debate truly is, more than just discussions of philosophy or discussions of policy. It's just a discussion about how the world around us shapes our environment. And that's what I think that I appreciate most about debate, and how everyone, all of my closest friends, they might do completely different things, but that we have this shared interest, and one period of the day we can all discuss it and become closer as a sort of family.
All right, that's Andrew. Andrew, by the way, considering Stanford or Harvard or Columbia as potential colleges next year, we wish him luck. Before we get started, let's also hear from Monroe about her experience on the George Washington forensics team.
I decided to join the speech and debate team because I knew that it was a really strong program, and I knew that Miss Cohen was an amazing teacher, and so many of my friends enjoyed it, and I knew that I could really grow as a public speaker. We have 30 minutes to prep a 7-minute speech, and so I've been able to really kind of hone those skills of learning to think on my feet. For about the 15 minutes that I'm writing my speech, I do tend to get pretty nervous. But once I start practicing, my confidence begins to grow. And when I walk into the room with the judge, I really try to exemplify as much confidence as I can, which in turn helps me become a better speaker.
Wow, Monroe is considering Santa Clara University next fall to study government, or maybe William and Mary, or, maybe Carleton College. We'll see what happens. Time to set the ground rules. Each side will present their case, ask each other questions, and have a chance to offer rebuttals as well. When it's finished, we'll go to our illustrious panel for their own questions, and we'll find out who they felt offered the best arguments. So let's get started now. The issue up for debate today is this: whether tax increases should be implemented to fund highway repairs and maintenance to address Colorado's growing population. Let's have our coin flip and get ourselves underway. So, Monroe, I'll have you come out and join me. We'll do the coin flip and figure out. What would you like, heads or tails? Whoops, down it goes. And I'm going to flip it again just to keep it honest, because I think you saw that. Go for it.
I'll go with heads.
And we have heads.
All right, I'll take the affirmative side.
All right, affirmative you are. The neg goes over here to this side. So let's get started. Now, you have, as a proponent, the floor is yours. 3 minutes to state your case. Go for it, Monroe.
Colorado's highway infrastructure is crumbling, and it is necessary to find a solution as soon as possible. One frequently cited solution is an increase in the gas tax, which is currently 22 cents per gallon. The tax should be raised to help increase highway funding because Colorado's highways are in need of repair, and fixing them is necessary for public safety, decreasing costs to individuals, and helping the environment. Highways throughout the state are in drastic need of repair. In Colorado, 16% of bridges are considered either structurally deficient or functionally obsolete, and 17% of roads are in poor condition. The repercussions of such dismal infrastructure cannot be understated. Nearly 1/3 of U.S. traffic fatalities are from roadway conditions. The American Society of Civil Engineers recommends that funding be increased by $1.5 billion per year in Colorado to improve the current conditions. And an increase of $500 million per year was the minimum recommendation increase needed to maintain the current roadway network. Increasing taxes on gasoline would be an excellent way for Colorado to fund the needed repairs to improve public safety. Additionally, the tax on gasoline should be raised because it would help individuals. Currently, it's estimated that 42% of America's major urban highways are congested, causing Americans to waste an average of 34 hours of traffic in 2010. This is particularly prevalent in Colorado, where we've seen incredible population growth, currently second in the nation. Increasing the gas tax to help increase highway funding would help congestion problems because we could invest in traffic technologies. Driving on roads in need of repair also costs Colorado motorists approximately $530 in extra vehicle repairs and operating costs. We must invest in highway funding as soon as possible, or the problems we see will only continue to worsen and their repairs will grow more expensive. Finally, increasing the gas tax would help the environment. As current gas prices are extraordinarily low, there's no deterrent to drive. With carbon levels increasing and contributing to global warming, we want to decrease the amount of pollutants in the atmosphere in order to mitigate both short-term and long-term problems. Scientists agree that global warming could lead to more severe storms, imbalances in ecosystems, spread of disease, and decreased availability of water. For us Coloradans, preserving our beautiful state should be a priority, and global warming should be combated at every opportunity. A gas tax would help to decrease pollution by encouraging people to not drive, because it is more expensive to drive.
Monroe, thank you very much. All right, Andrew, now you have 2 minutes for any questions and cross-examination. Go ahead.
Monroe, my first question for you is, do you happen to know how much the highway maintenance deficit is in Colorado?
I do not.
Okay, and then, but I noticed that you said that we need to increase our funding by $500 million a year. How much would a gas tax, how much would you raise a gas tax in order to meet this threshold?
Well, we would have to raise the gas tax by a significant amount. The most significant amount that's been proposed is up to $1.
Up to $1. So, all right. And then my next question for you is, with the Ford Motor Company having its own future division, looking to see what the next transportation boom is and looking past cars and looking more at public transport, why should we continue to perpetuate an antiquated system of transportation that has all these problems like you were outlining in your case?
Well, I think we've seen that even though many companies are looking towards better technology, that time is not yet with us. So we should take advantage of the gas that cars are using in order to help fund our highways.
Right. So I remember when the gas tax a couple years ago was about $4 or $5 a gallon. Did that discourage people from driving?
I don't think the gas tax was ever $4 or $5.
Sorry, gas price.
Yeah. So it certainly did because it was more expensive to drive and people were pushed to not drive as much because it's more expensive.
So has the environment in Colorado improved necessarily since then?
Well, we've seen a lot of other issues regarding the environment, and cars are certainly not the only problem that's contributing to global warming. But we should take every step necessary in order to help combat environmental change.
So by increasing highway funding, are you proposing also to expand the highways, perhaps to fix the traffic, like adding more lanes?
Well, we've seen that in Colorado we have added lanes, but we've also used toll lanes more to a greater extent. And this has also helped to combat traffic.
So you want to add toll lanes as well?
Perhaps.
Okay. And so I was just driving, I drive all the time on I-25, I-70. How do you propose to expand these lanes? Do you propose eminent domain? Because there's really no more room to grow these highways.
Well, I think that we've seen, in Denver, expanding the highway isn't really a feasible option. But we can use types of traffic technologies that control traffic flow in order to better control congestion.
Andrew, all right, thank you very much. Now, the question at hand today is whether tax increases should be implemented to fund road maintenance and improvements to serve Colorado's growing population. Andrew, your side is the negative. The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Colorado's tax on gasoline should not be raised to help increase highway funding. I begin by observing that in order to win the debate today, Monroe must prove not only that the tax should be raised, but also that the revenue that we get from the tax should be used to increase highway funding. Now, highway funding is the wrong way to spend the revenue we obtain from the tax, because highways are the largest contributor to urban sprawl, or uncontrolled expansion of urban areas. According to Chad Emerson, professor of law at Faulkner University, highway funding and legislation is the largest contributor to urban sprawl. In the context of Colorado, according to Denver City Council member Rafael Espinoza, we could be improving the quality of life in the core by investing in areas like public transport, but we continue displacing people and expanding urban sprawl through a focus on highway funding. The negative impact to urban sprawl is threefold. First, environmental damage and injustices. According to the 2014 Denver Environmental Health Department report, residents in North Denver neighborhoods adjacent to I-70 experience a 70% higher death rate from heart disease and a 40% greater frequency of severe asthma-related urgent care visits compared to those neighborhoods in Denver that are not affected by highway pollution. Second, social injustices. According to Eliza Carter of the Colorado Independent this July, expansion will only further isolate underserved neighborhoods from the heart of the city while exacerbating health risks. In other words, expanding highways would most affect neighborhoods that are, quote, ground zero for the gentrification that affects much of the city, end quote. And third, economic damage. Todd Littman of the Victoria Policy Institute writes that it makes little sense to expand the highway system if current funding is inadequate for required maintenance of existing supply. $1,000 to $3,000 annually per household is wasted in transport expenditures that could be spent on other goods to revitalize our great economy. But beyond these three impacts, let's take a step back and realize that expanding highways doesn't even decrease traffic. A 2014 report from the Colorado Public Interest Research Group shows that efforts to relieve congestion by widening highways are almost never successful. For example, the Katy Freeway in Houston cost $2.8 billion to widen, and within 2 years, 85% of commutes took longer than they did before the project. Now let me be clear. All of this is not to deny that our highways are in poor shape or that we shouldn't increase funding for them. However, all these problems can be rectified by increasing license or vehicle registration fees, changes that can happen within the jurisdiction of the Department of Transportation. But when the government raises new money from raising the gas tax, it shouldn't be used to perpetuate old problems like urban sprawl. Rather, it should propel us to where we need to be in the future. We need to look to the future, and we can do that by investing in modes like public transport or in expanding the light rail, both of which don't have the same negative effects I outlined as highways. Because I believe that new money needs to go to new modes of transportation, I am proud to negate today's resolution. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you very much. Monroe, you now have 2 minutes for questions. Your time begins now.
All right, Andrew, you talked about how we shouldn't be funding highways in the first place, but we've seen potholes in Colorado Springs, and this is a major health problem and safety problem. Should we not be addressing those issues?
Hang on. I was clear at the end of my speech that I'm not saying that we should stop funding highways. I was indicating that if we raise new money, like you're proposing by raising the gas tax, it should be spent on new modes of transportation. That's not to say that we can't raise vehicle registration fees to maintain our current system, but I believe that we need to spend new money and start looking towards the future, like Ford Motor Company. Even they are looking towards new modes of transportation that escape all of the flaws that you have identified in your case based on public transportation.
All right. You also talked about how highways can cause health problems for those who live close to them. Wouldn't having a gas tax discourage driving and therefore decrease the pollution near the highway and help problems related to asthma and heart disease?
I would disagree, and there are two reasons for that. First is that when you expand the highway and add more toll lanes, That is with the goal of decreasing traffic. So that means more cars are going to drive on these highways. Second of all, the second reason is because when you increase the gas tax, in economics, gasoline is what's considered there's inelastic demand for gasoline. So I brought up this in my cross-examination of you, where I pointed out that even when the gas price was $4 or $5, we haven't seen much difference environmentally. Like the problems that you identified in your case are still happening in the status quo. There's no difference. The way we can make a difference is if we shift to a new mode of thinking, like I am proposing, and invest in things like light rail, things that don't pollute nearly as much as thousands of cars passing through the highway.
All right. Could having a gas tax encourage Colorado citizens to buy more fuel-efficient cars and therefore encourage more green innovation in terms of transportation?
I think that in order to do that, like you were proposing, we'd have to raise the gas tax by something like a gallon because as we drive to the pump every single week, like it fluctuates a couple of cents, and like if we look at it a couple of cents, that's not going to stop us. It's the same inelastic demand. So unless we raise the gas tax to a point where it'd be a little bit nonsensical, I don't think that it would create a consciousness shift necessary enough to trigger us to invest in all these types of different renewable energies.
Monroe, okay, very good. Your 2 minutes now for rebuttal begins here. Go ahead.
All right. So I would begin by talking about that we should absolutely be continuing to invest in highways. It's unlikely that in the future or in any near future, anybody will stop using the highways and that we can come up with a completely new mode of transportation for Colorados. And we've seen that for Coloradans, especially driving on I-25 and I-70. As we have all experienced, traffic is absolutely painful. And we need to increase the gas tax in order to be able to invest in traffic technologies, which would help us in terms of traffic. Additionally, having a gas tax would discourage driving, mostly because it would encourage people to be looking at other modes of transportation, such as public transport. Additionally, it would encourage companies to begin to invest in green transportation for the future. We've seen in the past that when gas taxes have been high, people have been more incentivized to drive cars that are fuel efficient. And therefore, we can see that many of the health problems talked about near highways would be decreased by having an increased gas tax. Additionally, we've talked about how we could invest more in public transportation. But for the working poor, public transportation is not often a viable option. Right now, the light rail is more than 3 times as much as the cost of gasoline for the same distance traveled. And therefore, it's unlikely that for many people, having any investment in public transportation could in any way replace their cheap mode of transportation that they've seen with cars.
Thank you very much, Monroe. The question of the day, of course, today is whether or not we should fund improvements in our roads to meet with Colorado's growing population. Andrew, you have the negative. You now have 3 minutes to respond and close to the question. Go ahead.
In today's debate, my opponent is locked into an antiquated mode of transportation. Remember the 3 negative impacts to our highway system, all 3 of which go conceded. First is that highways perpetuate environmental injustices. Residents in neighborhoods from highways suffer 70% higher death rates from heart disease, and compared to those neighborhoods in Denver that are not affected by highway population. Second is social injustices. Current major highway projects would cut through not only economically, but also physically disadvantaged neighborhoods. This is the modern day equivalent of walling off neighborhoods. Monroe talks a lot about the working poor. Well, these 2 impacts of environmental injustice and social injustice both point to why the current antiquated mode of transportation is doing more harm to the working poor that are working so hard than what I am proposing. And third, the impact is economic damage. Think about it, 1,000 to 2,000, and that's a low estimate of how much we spend on highway-related and transportation-related expenditures that could be better spent on local goods that could revitalize our economy. Now, by affirming the resolution, Monroe affirms perpetuating this antiquated mode of transportation and exacerbating these horrific impacts. Now let's take a look at her case. First, she talks about accidents. Well, one thing that would for sure solve these accidents is investing in future modes of transportation like the light rail. I'm not trying to say that we should invent entirely new modes of transportation. I'm saying that we should invest more in things like the light rail project, which comparatively compared to highway projects, we spend very little on in Colorado. But that is where we're trying to get towards the future. And with a vote in negation, by investing in a light rail where there's a lot less probability of accidents, that solves this point that Monroe brings up. Next, she talks about traffic. Public transportation is one of the most efficient ways to go from place A to place B. And it also, if we're looking at traffic and spending a few hours, what outweighs is the 70% higher chance of people dying from heart-related disasters from these instances and continuing the gentrification. That outweighs waiting a few hours in traffic. And last is environment. Well, no matter what Monroe tries to say, she's still perpetuating this old, antiquated form of transportation where cars buy gas and pollute the atmosphere. When she adds more toll lanes, when she adds more lanes, when she takes over eminent domain, because if you look around the highway, there's actually no more room to add more lanes, then that's going to continue to harm the environment. So we need to look to the future. Let me be clear, again, I'm not denying that our highways are in bad shape, but new money should be used on new modes. We can maintain our current system by cutting waste and fraud and shifting parts of our budget, or even increasing vehicle registration, but new money should be used on new modes. Take energy, for example. If we raise new money for energy, would you want to continue to invest it in coal plants, which are proven to pollute? No. We would want to invest it in solar, wind, and clean technologies. Colorado has taken good steps on the energy front. It's time to take the same stand for our roads. Together, we can start with a new mode of thinking, and that starts with a vote in negation. Thank you very much.
Andrew Ying of Cherry Creek High School, thank you very much. Monroe Roush from George Washington. Your final 1-minute close.
All right. We can see that an increase in the gas tax is necessary. First, because our highway system is so bad. Public safety must be at the forefront of voters' thoughts when they're voting on whether or not to pass this gas tax, which would help to increase public safety by filling in many of the problems that we've seen on roads. Also, it would help individuals. Andrew talked about waiting a few hours in traffic, but I think we can all testify that we have waited many more than a few hours in traffic, which wastes our money and our gas. And additionally, it would help the working poor because it would decrease the repair costs to cars, which are simply unfeasible for many people. But finally, we must look at the environmental impacts. We would be encouraging people to drive less, and we would be encouraging people to drive eco-friendly cars. Additionally, we are encouraging investment in green transportation, and a gas tax would simultaneously help us repair our broken highway system as well as look to the future in terms of eco-friendly transportation.
Monroe, Andrew, thank you very much, and thanks a lot for that spirited debate. Let's go to our panel now of experts and get their thoughts on what they saw. It's a difficult one. Dominic, take it away.
Alan, thank you very much. Monroe and Andrew both offered a great debate. I think our legislature will be lucky to have such a vigorous debate on the issue. Let me throw it to my panel for some questions. We'll start with Monroe. Patty, you want to start us off?
Sure. How much is the state currently paying on the highway maintenance?
Currently, I'm not sure exactly about the statistics, but it's been suggested by the American Society of Civil Engineers that we increase by at least $500 million more per year.
Natasha?
You're spending quite a bit of time talking about population growth, how we need to make improvements to technology. Certainly in Colorado, weather plays a role in the conditions of our roads as well. Are we ever going to be able to tax ourselves out of this? Are we setting ourselves up to a situation where we won't be able to raise the tax enough to fix our roads?
Well, I think that as both Andrew and I have talked about, the gas tax would help us also invest in future transportation that would ultimately allow us to not have to tax ourselves too much.
Let's get some questions over to you, Andrew. Patty?
So, Andrew, are you for a tax if it went to new technology?
Absolutely. I am all for new money to new modes of transportation, but the gas tax cannot be raised to result in continue to invest in this antiquated transportation. Now, I want to bring up a quick point about the deficit, a maintenance deficit that we currently have. It's, according to the current numbers from the Colorado Department of Transportation, $7.9 billion. And according to a 2011 Independence report, raising the gas tax by 1 cent would only raise $300 million over 10 years. So that's less than 2% 50% of the and that's exactly why Ms. Gardner brings up a fantastic point. It's unsustainable. We can keep raising it a penny by penny by penny, but that results in voter fatigue, and we need to look to new forms that escape all of these flaws.
Well, speaking of Ms. Gardner, let her offer one question. Go ahead.
Well, related to that, if we get in a situation where we're only looking at modern technologies, are we ignoring the fact that most Denverites have cars in their garages and will continue to use them and have made investments personally of their finances for that?
Absolutely. So I am a Westerner. I love my car. I know how much I love to drive around. It's part of our culture. But what I wanted to make the point of is that I'm not opposing necessarily that we should leave our highways in this poor condition. I'm saying that if we want to, we should maintain it but not increase it. And if we're going to maintain it with our deficit, we can get to that through vehicle registration fees and increasing those. Things that can happen with the push of a button in the Colorado Department of Transportation instead of continuing to fill up the ballot. Just look at the ballot right now. There's like a million different initiatives that we could sign, and those could go to a lot of more helpful things. And we shouldn't continue on this slippery slope of a penny for this, a penny for that, especially when we have a much better solution in the future of transportation.
Andrew, thank you. Alan, we're going to need a couple seconds here to decide.
You have to put those heads together pretty firmly to figure this one out. All right, Dominic, thanks a lot. We're going to give our panel a moment to consider whom they felt won this debate, and we'll have a moment for them. And this gives me a moment to let you know this is one of 8 different debates we're presenting this season. To check all of them out, you can go to cpt12.org/election. And our winner tonight is going to go on to compete in the final round coming up on November 6th at 9:30 right here on Channel 12. Okay, panel, do you have a decision?
Alan, we do. It was a very difficult one, but we felt in the end, after hearing all the different argumentation, that Andrew offered the best arguments for the case. But again, both of you offered great arguments, and look forward to seeing you both on November 6th.
Well, excellent, and great job by the both of you. If the policy discussions were this good at the state level as you talked about, boy, we would be in great shape. Congratulations. You both gave our viewers a wonderful debate tonight, and you both ought to be very proud as well. And so, Andrew, you now go on to that final round where we will crown a 2016 Both Sides of the Story champion. So we will get to see more of Monroe as well in our third place match. That comes up on November 6th at 9 p.m. And that's all we have time for our program tonight. And I want to thank our excellent students for accepting our challenge and participating in our debate. I also want to thank our esteemed panel here tonight for sharing their thoughts. And finally, thank you for tuning in. It's the support of viewers like you and our sponsors that help make this show a reality. Be sure and tune in next week to check out our third place match and find out who will be named Both Sides of the Story champ coming up. If you're looking for more information about this program or about the Colorado Decides debate series, please go to our website, cpt12.org/election or cbsdenver.com. And you can catch me every morning on CBS 4 for all the latest news and information about this year's election and its issues. For everybody here at Colorado Public Television, I'm Alan Janae. Thanks for watching, and that is Both Sides of the Story.